Hello, it's Jeremy and welcome back to Blender for Designers. Today we're going to be modeling a can, specifically this can. Not necessarily Diet Dr. Pepper, but this sort of small pony can that's kind of a little sleeker than a regular soda can. So with any object, the first thing you want to do is shoot it. Not that kind of shoot it. Better. So we're going to bring that image to Photoshop. This is going to be used as a reference image, so you want to make it nice and straight, which I've already done. Bring up your grid to do that. Then I created a path to silhouette, so we're going to show you that. And then you just very clearly go layer, vector mask, current path. And give you a nice little silhouette. And you'll save that as a PNG. We call it can253 ref, because it's a reference image that I'm going to use to model to. And it's 253 is the shot I took. All right, now that we got this thing siloed, let's start up Blender here. All right, so we're in Blender. We do not need this light. We do not need the cube, but we do need to be in cycles. All right, so what do we want here in the center? We want a cylinder because a soda can is basically a cylinder. And this is where you do the parameters for the cylinder. 32 faces, radius 1, depth of 2. We'll change those in a minute, but 32 is the amount of little facets you get here. And it's the default and looks good. So we'll just we'll go there and we'll go right to the front. And then we'll hit 5 to go into orthographic view. And these facets are bugging me, so I'm going to smooth them out. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to bring that image into Blender. So we're going to bring up our tool shed here, which you can hit the N key to bring up or hit this little plus button. Either one works. So yeah, let's go to background images. All right, so we want to add an image and we can open it. And let me just go find that thing, can caps, and then can253 right here. All right, so as we can see, this is pretty big, but let's, so the other thing we can do other than shooting this can is we can also measure it. So I actually shot that with my trusty calipers. It's 57.33 millimeters in diameter, and then 102.91 millimeters top to bottom. And I decided to use millimeters, use the metric system, even though I'm American, because frankly, the metric system's kind of awesome. So let's bring that into Blender. So we're going to do, so it's 57 diameter by 102 height. So we're actually, let's do that as centimeters. That'll be 10.291 height. So again, we can go find our dimensions here, and the height is Z, so that's 10.291. And then let's look at what the diameter is. Diameter is 5.733. So there you go. So now actually what I want to do is I want to get the can to be about the right size. So you can see this is now at the exact size we want. So I'm going to hit the 1. And then I'm going to hit Z to bring up that's just the kind of wireframe version of this. And then so we're going to go to our image and we're going to shrink it down a little bit. So this is where we adjust the parameters to our image. This is the scale. So we can just bring that down, to we're right about there. Maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, of course it's a photograph, so it has a bit of perspective. And then so I actually was careful in Photoshop to try to center it, but it's not perfectly centered. You shouldn't, especially if it's a photograph like this, it's going to have some perspective here, so you shouldn't model so directly to it. But it's a good reference to kind of get an idea of where the different points are that it folds through. So actually maybe that's probably good. And you can adjust the X and the Y here too. And if you hold the Shift key, it'll go slowly, so you can do kind of fine-tune adjustments. All right, so now we got our cylinder. I'm gonna hit the Z key again, make it solid, because I kind of want to see what this looks like. Hit 5 to get some perspective here. And then, so what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna smooth this out even further, and we're gonna use something called a subsurf modifier. What this does is actually creates more points and creates them curvier. It's actually very useful, and it's a little hard to describe, but it's called subdivision surface, and I'm actually going to want 2 of these, and you can see it kind of creates this craziness already. But the points are still the same. So how do we fix that? All right, so first of all, I'm going to go, sorry, I hit the tab to go into edit mode, and you can see these points are actually all here, but it's creating this crazy subsurfiness. So the reason it's doing that is because what we have is called, I'm going to turn it off for a sec. We have this, like, they call it n-gon at the top, which just means it's got all these points, and it's messing us up. So I'm going to hit A to unselect everything. And I'm going to show you how to select this whole thing around. It's called it's called what they call an edge loop. And if you hold Shift and Option, or Shift and Alt if you're on a PC, and then you right click it, you get the edge loop. And then you could do this one too. And you can do it on anything. And if you want to create a new edge loop, you hit Control R, and then you can add one. But actually, I'm going to undo that because I want to show you how it changes things with the subsurf. So I'm going to put the subsurf back on. Now I'm going to create an edge loop. In fact, I'm actually going to use my scroll wheel, and I'm going to create 2 edge loops. And then I can hit my left mouse button. So you see, now that's actually controlling this. So you hit the right key. Now I'm going to scale Z. There we go. That's special. All right. So now if we look at the top, we still have that weird thing. But now we can kind of scale this in. Scale Z. Sorry, we just scale period. And then we're going to scale a little bit here. And then I'm going to E. Then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the X key. And I'm going to get rid of that face. So only faces. Now I'm going to right click again. I'm going to hit E. And I'm going to hit scale once more. And then I'm going to go E. And then scale again. But actually what I'm going to do is merge these at the center. So to do that, I go Alt. Sorry, actually I can just look it up. When you want to look up a command, just hit the space bar and you just hit merge. So I didn't remember it was Alt M, but I didn't have to remember because I can just do it right here. And I'm going to merge it center. All right, let's do the same thing at the bottom. Actually, for the bottom, we actually, I think, want to shape this in a particular way. And we will go over that in a minute. But I'm going to pause the recording first. So for the bottom, let's look at what the bottom of a can actually looks like. So I Googled that, and you can see it actually kind of dents in a little bit. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a soda can before, so you know this. And one other thing I wanted to look up was that I'd actually have a diagram of a can from a while ago. This isn't the same can, but gives you an idea. It kind of flares here at the bottom a bit. All right, so let's take a look at what the bottom actually is going to look like. Again, we don't need to be perfect. So I'm going to loop cut that again, scale in, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to X out, get rid of the face, extrude, E, scale, and then I think I remember being Alt M, right? Yep, merge at center. Okay, awesome. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to raise this up a little bit so we kind of get a little indentation here at the bottom. Again, it's the bottom, so people aren't going to see it that often, but you want to be kind of good about it. So we're going to raise that up a bit. Now, you notice it's still totally distorted, but that's fine. We're going to get there. So let's just see how far we can go. And actually, we can hit 1 and 5, and hit Z to maybe see what the kind of look is. So we probably want it about up, not much higher than that. All right, and then since I go back to Z, so hear everyone complaining about, oh my god, it just looks so deformed. And hit another loop here, and then just bring that down so we have sort of a more normal looking can. All right, so let's hit Z again, and then let's get these two selected. And it actually looks pretty good. And then, of course, the thing about the can is that it was not, if you look at these reference images, there's actually a rim around the side there, so we should do that. So let's just scale this in and make that the rim. Let's make that the rim. And then add another loop cut here. Because remember it was pretty sharp. So we're going to raise that up a bit. Yeah, there we go. That's not bad. It's just maybe you can take both these and just scale them in a bit. Let's go to perspective, see what that looks like. It looks pretty good. All right, again, we can refine it. So we can go back to 1, 5, and then where's my image? Yeah, there we go. Moving next so that we can see it right next to it, so we can see what that actually looks like. So yeah, actually that kind of tells us we're going to want to raise this up a bit. And then let's go back, and it looks like we want to add a little bit of detail here. So we're going to pull that up a bit and then just scale it in so we kind of have a nice little ledge here. And you can see that I'm actually going to add another loop cut here to give that a little bit more sharpness down there. So that looks pretty good. Bring this, again, we can keep tweaking it. These cans aren't exactly the same, so. Yeah, no, if you have the specs, of course, you can do awesome things like that, but let's go back to 1. So you have to be on an orthographic view to see the image. If you start, or on one of the angles. So if you're on if you just wander around, you can't see it. But if you're on 1, or you're on 3, or you're on 7, which is the top, then you can always see it. Although you can have it be only on one or the other too. Scale this in even more. Yeah, that's kind of a good look. All right, cool. All right, now the top obviously is going to need a bit of work. Before we do anything else, let's save this. All right, so we got to take a look at that top here. So first of all, we're going to create an edge loop to kind of give it a stiffer edge. So as I was saying, you hit Control R, and then you can slide it up like that, and that gives us a nice, better shape. But actually, we see that it kind of bends in, so I'm going to go to that place where it bends in right there. Then I'm going to take another edge loop, bring that up, and you can see that we need to scale that down. So I'm going to S, and it allows us to scale it down a bit. Yep, and you can see that we're going to need yet another edge loop. Yes, so you can kind of see this in real time. And that kind of disappears, but it's still there, so you can still select it. I can bring that out a bit. Bring that out, maybe down a little bit, like that. And then bring that up a little bit. Actually, I'm going to make that whole top bit the same level. Scale Z0. A nice flat top. Actually, I'm going to go for one more little edge loop not right there. You can delete edge loops, by the way, and it'll keep your image intact. Yeah, it looks cool. See how that compares. Yeah, it looks good. Actually, I can maybe even scale this inner one out a little bit. When we look at the top of the can, we know that's wrong. There's supposed to be a tab there, there's supposed to be a bunch of little details. So the best way we can figure that out is to actually just take a picture of it. Or even better than a picture, a scan. Scanning is a really good way to look at things if they're flat or sort of semi-flat like this. And here's what that scan actually looks like. I should say when you're scanning something you want to wrap it in black, and I wrapped it in a black sweater. But what's nice about a scan like this is that it's actually as close as you can get in a real photograph to being nearly orthographic, which means straight on. So I bought this can to Photoshop, silhouetted it out with a path like I did before, you can see it right there. And then what I also did is put some guides, both vertically and horizontally, so we can vertically and horizontally center this. All right, and then what we're going to do is save that out to a PNG. So we'll call this cantop.png, or replace the old one. And then let's open Blender and load that into top view. So I'm going to tab back out to object mode, and then hit 7 to get the top view. Notice we still have this can here. We don't want it there. So it's actually, we can take that image and we can bring that to only on the access all views. We can bring it to so it's only on the front. So then we can see it if we do like this, but if we go to 7, which is the top view, we don't see it. And we can add another image, add image, open. Let's go to can scan, can top.png. All right, perfect. And then we can, like we did before, we can scale that down. Let's hit Z actually to get perfect view so we can see exactly how big that needs to be, which is about that big. All right, so now we can see exactly how we're going to construct this can. So let's just tab back into edit mode and let's go way to the Z. But actually one thing I want to do is I want to bring this on the top and then just maybe, so you can bring it on top and we can just fade it out a little bit so we can kind of see what we're doing with the can. So we can see a lot of things that we're doing. So one thing we want to do is we want to kind of have this little ridge that goes up and actually maybe see how these cans are constructed. Let me go back to Photoshop. Yeah, there seems to be a ridge on the outside and then it goes down and then it kind of goes around a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to the top view. And then, so we actually have a pretty good ridge here, right there. That probably stiffens me out a little bit, or stiffens the edge there. So one thing we can do is take that top edge and pull it down, just put a little bit of curve on that edge. All right, so then let's go back into edit mode. And then it looks like this goes in a bit. And keeping those all three level. And then there's going to be a nice dip down in the middle here. So we're on top view, so we can't really see that dip, so we can just bring it down here in. There we go, nice big dip there. Maybe bring this in a little bit. Yeah, so you get kind of a little ridge there. Ah, that looks can-like. I'm going to grab this can here, and one thing I notice about it is that this top here doesn't actually quite get to the level of this ridge, and it's got a bit of a curve to it. So let's get into Blender and fix that. So let's tab back into edit mode, and then so these are at the same level right now, these two edge loops. So we want to keep all these three edge loops, I'm going to pull them down just a bit. Now actually I think I want to take that fourth one and pull it down with it. Pull it down a bit. Good. Scale this edge loop in a bit. So that basically these are the two of the same. I'm going to raise this up just a hair. That's nice. That gives us a bit of a curve. And then let's look at this thing again. Actually, it seems to be a sharper curve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen that a bit. Yeah, give that a nice ridge to it. There we go. And you can give this a bit more. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we want to create that little tab in the area. So let's just go back to our top view again. And we want to create this tab. So I'm going to click on that center key. And then I'm going to hit spacebar to do cursor to, snap cursor to selected. All right, so now that I'm snapping the cursor to selected, I can add something there. What I'm going to add there, I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to add a plane. And then what I'm going to do is I always want to isolate that plane so we can make the tab out of it. So I'm going to do select, inverse, and then I'm going to hit H for hide. So it hides everything. It's not gone, it's just hidden. Now I'm going to go to top view and we have this isolated. And the first thing you can probably see is even though it was a plane, it's subsurfed down to a circle. So it's actually what we kind of want because this is kind of a curved object. So we're going to scale it to the size of the tab. And I'm going to extend these guys out so that it gets to the length of the tab. I'm going to subdivide this. W subdivide. Subdivide this by 5. It's because what we actually want to do is we want to get rid of these center So I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to select all these faces. Then I'm going to delete them, hit X, and delete faces. And then, so that gives me these nice little gaps. So let's go back to edge mode. This is where you just kind of sculpt a little bit here until you kind of, it's like you're just tracing. You're just tracing the edges here, and they actually look pretty good here. You kind of just get this to a point. You probably want to keep this symmetrical, but you just want to kind of get these till it looks about right. And with the subsurf on, it actually helps you a lot here. So I'm just going to fast forward a bit as I work through these. The idea is just to mold them in shape and keep it symmetric. And that looks like a pretty good tab. Bring this back into top view, one thing I do notice is that there's a little bit of a ridge here, and actually looks like it's actually coming down a bit from the main tab. So to simulate that, we're going to extrude this out. So we're going to hit E, and then we want to extrude in the Y direction, so we do that. And we'll scale in just a little bit. There you go. And obviously the photo, or actually the tab itself, doesn't look like it's entirely symmetrical. But that doesn't matter. We'll make it symmetrical. All right, so then we're going to actually go down a little bit, because that's what we need to do. We're going to hit down, just ever so slightly. And then go back to top view again. And then we're going to extrude in Y just again, till we get to those edges, and we're going to bring these up to the top, scale out a little bit, scale X to scale in a little bit. Looks about right to me. It's kind of funny when you see these curves with the straight lines from them, but that's how it rolls in subsurf land. Alright, so we're going to actually want to give this thing just a bit of depth. We'll just hit A, select everything, and then extrude in Z. There you go, that's a nice little tab there. As you can see, the subsurf's on, so it gives us a nice little curve and everything, so we don't have to think about that. Actually, if I want to isolate these, I want to just be able to isolate them if I need to. So I'm actually going to create a vertex group. I'm going to call this tab. I'm going to hit assign. I guess unselect, and then so we select, and then let's do Alt H to bring everything back. So that, yeah, there we go. I can isolate the tab if I need to. Perfect, 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 perfect. But what doesn't look perfect is that we're not seeing any detail here on the top of the can other than the tab itself. But I'm not going to actually model that detail. I'm not going to manipulate the geometry. I'm going to use an image called a bump map, which raises and lowers that. So I went in Photoshop and I took this scan I had and I created this image, and I'll go over how I did that. But to get that image onto the can, we have to UV unwrap it. So let's take a look at the can itself. We're going to try to find the seam here. So I'm going to roll this highlight over towards the back between the nutrition facts and the barcode. And there you can kind of see there's a bit of an overlap there. And that's where the seam is in these cans. It's kind of hard to notice, but it's there. And as you can usually see, the seam is on the exact opposite of the main panel. And the other thing we're going to notice too is that this can is silver here on the top and silver here on the bottom. As I said, this is actually a different piece, but we're just going to simulate it all together. So we're only going to really worry about wrapping our graphics to this part. All right, so to UV unwrap this can, we want to go to the back and create a seam. So to get to the back, instead of hitting 1, which gets to the front, and let's go into orthographic view, you hit Control 1 on your numpad to get to the back. And then so we're going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. And this back end is the seam we want. So let's just hit the box select here, which could be, and we're going to select all of these. And so we're just going to create a seam for this whole thing. You notice I didn't go all the way to the bottom. That's because the bottom is separate, and we'll unwrap that separately. In fact, we don't. No, that's fine. We don't want. Yeah, we don't want the second edge here. We just want those. And then so we're going to go to UVs, and we're going to hit Mark Seam, and then we're going to hit Save, because I have to create I actually have to create a layout for this. So we see that our radius is 57.33, So to figure out the circumference, you hit 57.33 times pi, and you get 180.107. So looking at that, our die lines are going to be 180 by 11 by 102.91. So let's go into Illustrator. 180.91 times 102.11. And then let's go ahead and mark that center there. And then usually what you want to do is you want to just add a little bit of a tab towards the other edge of it, because there's always going to be just a little bit of overlap. So now I got this lovely layout that I laid into this Illustrator file, into the die lines that I calculated. This edge, of course, is going to be the top. So now I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to actually shrink the artboards to be much closer to the layout here. So I'm actually going to leave a bit of room at the top. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to have room for the top and the bottom, and we can put stuff there. And then what I'm going to do is, even with the die lines there, I'm going to export this. And I'm going to call this Can Tutorial Layout with Dies. And of course I'm going to use artboards. And all right. So now we're going to go back into Blender. I'm going to hit the A key, and I'm going to select that edge loop, and I'm going to mark that as a seam. And then I'm going to go to the bottom where we cut off here, and I'm going to select that edge loop, and I'm going to mark that as a seam. So just like in the last tutorial, I'm going to split the view, open the UV image editor, and open that image we just exported from Illustrator. You want to unwrap everything that's going to be the artwork. So that's between here and here. So let's grab this one, that one, and then all the ones in between. Let's make sure we get them all. So let's make sure they're all highlighted. And then we're going to hit 1. And then here's what we do. Since it's a cylinder, we can use a cylinder projection. Yeah, now you can see that looks a little messed up, but don't worry, we'll scale it back down. But before we scale that down, let's do that thing where we get a material on here so we can actually see what we're doing. So, node editor, new material, let's call this Can1. Add a shader, or sorry, add a texture, image texture, select, we already have this loaded in, so we can go to Can Tutorial Layout Dies 1. Boop. And then material. All right, so it looks like a total crazy mess, but we can fix that. So we're going to scale in the Y direction, scale it way down. All right, now we're going to zoom in, and we're going to get a little closer. You know, we can manipulate this around, but let's scale this way down. So let's zoom in so we get this whole thing here. We're going to go put the 2D cursor right there. Let's go way in there. 2D cursor exactly where it needs to be. Hit G to manipulate this over here. Again, this is the same thing we did in the other tutorial. And we're going to scale to the 2D cursor. So let's hit scale. And the cap is slightly in here, so we're going to actually want to, so those edges, these edges up here are actually where the cap lives. So we actually don't want, we want that not to be too far in there. So probably right about there. And then we're going to scale X. Now, let's see how that looks. Ah, yes, there we have it. A totally fit. And yeah, you can see that that's just going right up to that cap there. So that's perfect. It's exactly what we want. And then as you can see, we have not yet unwrapped the bottom, the top and the bottom. The way we're going to do that is we're going to start with the top. We're going to hit 7 to go to the top view. And then, so we actually don't want to select this tab. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my vertex groups, and there's tab, and I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to hide it for a sec, hit H. And then I'm going to hit B, and I'm going to select all the ones on top. And then I'm going to go to unwrap, and I'm going to project from view. And there you go. And we are going to scale this down a bit. Let me not do it to the 2D cursor. Let's move the top right about there. And now we can Alt-H to bring back the tab. Hit A. And then we're going to go to the bottom. So the same thing you do, Control-7 to go to the bottom. Hit B to box select. And then the same thing. Unwrap, project from view. And we're just going to move that over there. And then we want to unwrap the tab as well. So we're just going to go again to the top. And we're going to hit A to unselect. We're going to select the tab. And we're going to unwrap, project from view. Actually, we can move this to the very far left. So now we can see, now we hit A key. And we hit the A key again. And we can see this is the entire bottle unwrapped. So this bit here is the top. This bit here is the bottom. And this bit here is the tab. And now we can manipulate everything around and size it to just how we like it. Great. And then another thing we want to actually see is that we might want to put these into Illustrator to see where our bounds are. So what we can do is we can UV, export UV layout. And then so what we can do is go back into Illustrator and create a new layer. We'll call it UV. And then we can place can UVs. Should be exact format of our document. And indeed it is. And the reason we actually do that is because we want to be able to get something, particularly on the top here. So speaking of the top, I'm going to bring back that bump map I promised, the one where I'm going to create detail on the top that goes beyond just the tab. So I'm opening that in Photoshop, and while I manipulate that right now in Photoshop, I'm going to explain what the bump map is. The bump map is basically a map that either pushes things up or pushes things down based on their gray values. So neutral gray is pushed nowhere. That's why this background is neutral gray. And then white pushes up and black pushes down a bit. And most people want to push down a bit. So I'm going to trace out the shape that I got from the scan using curves and stuff. And I'm going to make that slightly black. And a lot of them are not pushed, like they're not hard lines. So I'm going to blur them a bit. So to get this bump map onto the can, we need to use the UV layout. So let's open can UVs, and then let's get that can on there. I'm gonna make a group out of that, duplicate it, and flatten it out. And I'm gonna leave this here because I wanna see what the shape is. And we're gonna put that in a group, and we're gonna put that bump map onto our UV layout using that top image of the can to size it. We don't actually need that there. But what we do need is we need a full gray background. We'll call this UV. Let's just save this as can bump.psd, and then get rid of the UV. So save this as can bump.png. Now let's bring this into Blender. So let's get this nice and big. Tab out. And then let's actually hide our images so we can actually see what we're doing. So let's take a look at the bump map. First of all, we can take out and actually while we're here, let's make this a glossy shader. So just X, and let's do a shader, glossy shader, and a slight bit of gray. I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And the reason I'm doing this as a glossy shader because it's actually a metal. And actually with metallics, I actually like to use Beckman instead of GGX. Usually I like to use GGX, but Beckman works very nicely for metallics. So to do the bump map, we need the normal map to do its thing. So what we do is the normal map is what causes the things to bump. So what we do is we add an image texture. And we're going to open that, and that's going to be can layouts, can bump. All right. And what we want is not color, but non-color data. And then we want another node, which is vector bump. And so you go in with height, and you go out with normal. And you don't see anything. The reason you don't see anything is because we have not rendered anything. So one thing we're going to do is let's look at what this looks like rendered. So before we do that, let's get a background in there so we know what we're doing. Let's use nodes on the world. Let's add a texture, an environment texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go grab one of the environments that I like from Video Copilot. I happen to just like this environment. So let's throw that in there. And then we can do render view. And we can see, yeah, we actually have a bump map on there, the whole can. Now, of course, we don't have any of this because the rest of that's just silver and it's reflecting all this brown stuff. Ah, yeah, there we go. You have to have perspective to actually see the thing. And you can see it's reflecting the floor right now because we don't have the texture on there. But if we put the texture on there, we put the image texture, you can see we got that on there. That's kind of cool. So let's get into Illustrator and actually export these things correctly. All right, so we're going to take off the UV, we're going to take off the dye lines, and I kind of separated this into two sections. One is this background here, where it's going to be the green and the silver. I actually want to be metallic and silver and kind of cool and silver looking, but then there are these other bits, the callouts, the white background, and then the logo and stuff that I actually want to be white. You can think of it this way. If you were actually printing on a can, you would just print the green directly onto silver, but all this other stuff, you want to print white behind it so it would stick out a little bit more. So we can totally do that in Blender. It's a really good thing to do. So first of all, we want to export just the bits that we're going to want white behind, which is going to be all these things. So I'm going to put my grid on so you can see where the transparency is, and I'm going to take the dye line out, and then I'm going to export that. And I'm going to call that can layout white. And I'm going to use artboards. And then I'm actually going to do this all the way to 300 because this is not that big a can. And very importantly, I'm going to make sure we have transparent on. All right, so then we need the silver background part. So that's this bit. But the problem is we actually don't really want the silver to be that color, if we can avoid it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my little Pathfinder palette, and we're going to take these together, and we're going to subtract. So there we go. We have a nice transparency there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. File, export, and I'm going to call this can silver. Use artboards, I'm going to export, 300, hit OK. So now back in Blender, let's get those images on this can. Alright, so let's take a look at this wonderful can. One thing I'm actually going to do is take the roughness down to like 0.15 for the can. Leave the bump texture. We're going to go open this texture, and we're going to make it the can silver. Woo! Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, you notice that suddenly the alpha is black. But now, because I actually want to be able to select a color for the can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a color input, which is actually an RGB input. It's kind of confusing me before. So then I'm going to mix and do a color, mix RGB. I'm going to mix that with the image texture. But I'm going to use the alpha as the mask, and I did that totally backwards. There we go. Perfect. And so now we can actually totally control the brightness of the entire can, or frankly the color if we want to. So that's cool. So now we just need another image texture, which we're going to do as a diffuse shader. So we got a diffuse shader here. And then we got to duplicate that. And we're going to open the other image texture, can layouts, and we're going to look for can layout white. All right, color that there. And then we're going to mix these two shaders. So you can see what that shader looks like. This. And we see you don't have any. We have black all where we have the alpha, but don't worry, we're going to get rid of that. So we're going to do a mix shader. Same basic deal we did before using this alpha. There we go. So now we have, as you can see, we have this all laid out. We have a really nice white. We have a green that's metallic, but the white isn't. All right, so now that we got this can going, let's do a little nipping and tucking here. First thing I want to do is change the bump map a little bit. So I actually just went ahead and did that. I went to Photoshop and I have a new bump map there. And I actually created it as a smart image, which is what I should have done in the first place. And just increase the opacity of the various black parts. And then one thing I also want to do is take these lines. And I blurred the lines a little bit. And one thing I want to do is take these other lines. I'm going to flatten them. And I'm going to blur them just by like 1 bit. And then set that to multiply again. So I'm going to save that. And then that updates here in the right spot. So you save it again. And I'm going to save as can bump new. All right, so then I'm going to just replace that image. Can bump new. And then I'm going to go up there. We're going to go into rendered view. So you can see, yeah, that's much better. See, look at that. You can see much nicer detail. Of course, one thing that is still bothering me is we don't have a little divot here. And I was going to put a bump map there, but actually I can show you how to do this in geometry. So we're going to go out of the rendered view, and then I'm going to go top view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn off subsurf for a sec so we can see just all the points that we have. And I'm going to take these, and then I'm going to extrude, scale, and then I'm going to make this a rectangle by scale x0 and scale x0, and then plain old scale y. Don't do it to 0, and then we can scale that up again. So now we have a nice little place for a little divot here. We could scale this up even further. But then what I actually want to do is I want to extrude this up a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go Z, so in the Z direction only. Well, so actually, let's just turn on the subsurf again. So you can see that that's a square, but we actually want that to be a little round divot, and there it is. But we actually want that to be a little flatter, so we're going to go one more, EZ. Or with the subsurf, you want it to get that ridge, you need to do that. And that does it. There you go, nice little ridge. All right, and yeah, you can see the facets there, but not a big deal. But actually, one thing I do want to do, a couple things I want to do on that. So I want to select all these things. First of all, make it smooth. And then second of all, I want to add them to the tab. So I want to assign them. So you hit A key and select. Yeah, it selects the entire tab. All right, cool. Let's go back to the rendered view. And another thing I wanted to do was just fix this backside problem we were having before. You can see there's a big line right there. So to do that, we're going to go to the backside. So you do that by hitting Control Numpad 1. And I'm going to tab into edit mode. If you haven't already hit the A key, make sure you select everything. And I can show you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit the A key here so I don't select everything. And I'm going to just select these UVs here. And then I can scale in the X direction. So scale X, that's scale horizontally. So there we just pinch it just a little bit. So now when we tab out, yep, we lose that ugly seam that we had. And then I just want to shape this this top a little bit more. So let's go back out of rendered view, go tab into edit mode, and then one thing I actually want to do is I want to scale this in a little bit so the top isn't quite so wide, and then we can actually scale this out a bit, and then I'm gonna just lower it down. I'll lower that down, and then I want to select the tab as well, and then we want to select this, and then we want to select that inner bit, and to do that we can just hit Z to see everything. Too much, frankly, and then C select to do that, and then I can right click out of that, and then I can go back to that. I'm just gonna lower that just a hair. I'm going to take this and just grab that as well. I'll lower this just a little bit. And then what I want to do is I want to take these three and actually just raise them up a little bit. So, ba-doop, ba-doop, and there's a third one in there. Yep. And just raise this just a little bit. Cool. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So let's just see, look at that. And just look at my regular can in front of me, holding it. It's probably a little wider than the actual can, that rim, but I think I don't hate that. I think that's good. I don't want it to go too shallow. So now we got our can, and we can do a whole bunch of stuff with it. We can render this out of Blender. We can actually stage it like a product shot. We can import it into Element 3D, and we can do a whole bunch of stuff with it. But I am going to stop this video now because I'm going to start other videos where I'm going to show you exactly how to do that stuff. And I'm just going to hold here for a minute so I can put those links to those videos up. So click on them. You can, as I said, render in Blender, go into Element 3D, or do some other fun stuff. All right.